With Dead Island 2 finally releasing on April 21st on Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, PS5, and PC after years in development, it's been a hell of a journey. Even more interesting is how much the formula has changed compared to the first game, which launched in 2011 and was developed by Techland, who would subsequently make Dying Light. Let's look at 10 of the biggest differences between Dead Island 1 and 2 and how things have changed. Tone and atmosphere.
It's the infected! Run for the storage room! Just a bit further!
Every fan remembers the initial Dead Island 1 cinematic trailer, and though it didn't quite hit the same emotional heights, the game was still pretty serious. With Dead Island 2, Dambuster Studios is taking more of a lighthearted, satirical feel to the tone. Narrative designer Lydia Cockrum told WCCF Tech, "The Los Angeles setting resulted in wanting this whole pulpy, irreverent tone that's a love letter to B-movies from the 80s, and all these kinds of things that we have in our psyches." The team felt that this worked well with the settings and characters instead of the dark and serious directions several games picked. It also feeds into the game's streamlined nature, where you're focused solely on killing zombies. Linear versus open world. Banoi Island in the first game is considered an open world. Aside from some areas gated by story progress, you could explore freely. Dead Island 2, on the other hand, is decidedly not an open world title. Los Angeles, or Hell A, is divided into multiple districts that open up as you progress the story with different side quests, collectibles, and so on in each level. However, it's a lot more linear based on various previews, and you're mostly killing zombies en route from point A to B with a few things to distract you. You can revisit previous districts, but the entire world isn't stitched together into this freely explorable space with no loading screens. Slayers vs. Survivors. Dead Island 1 introduced us to 4 survivors: Logan, Perna, Sam B, and Sean May, with different stories, abilities, and personalities. Dead Island 2 has 6: Jacob, Ryan, Carla, Bruno, Danny, and Amy, and dubs them Slayers, leaning more into this pulpy tone. They also have unique playstyles. Like, Danny is good with throwing weapons, but instead of having unique skill trees, each Slayer has a customizable skill deck with different cards. Also, for those concerned about characters quipping too much back and forth, creative director James Worrell told The Loadout, "Generally speaking, our characters try not to quip at everything. Each has an idiom or phrase, but the team has stayed well away from this notion that heroes should suddenly go into this comic exchange that goes back and forth and back and forth." Citing Thor: Love and Thunder's exchanges, Worrell said, "We made a conscious decision to stay away from that kind of stuff, and hopefully we've achieved just the right balance. Time, of course, will tell." Flesh system. Probably the coolest or most gruesome difference between the two games is the flesh system in Dead Island 2. It's a procedural gore system which allows for much more realistic damage. You could knock their jaw off, split through their face, etc. Depending on the weapon, you may also slash through flesh or bone or crush limbs outright. Zombies will even burn and melt procedurally, the latter causing their limbs to fall off. It's a huge step up in detail and sheer overkill. Combat changes. The modding system for weapons in Dead Island 2 looks to be more advanced, with different options depending on the materials gathered. They still have durability and rarity tiers like the first game, but their damage type now plays a bigger role in combat thanks to the flesh system. For example, katanas are better for cutting off limbs and more precise damage, while sledgehammers are good for wide-arcing swings that can hit multiple enemies at once and deal blunt damage. The overall similarity between both games' combat is still pretty strong, especially since dodging is still available, but Dead Island 2 feels more refined and hard-hitting. Fury vs. Rage mode. On the surface, Dead Island 2's Fury seems the same as Rage mode from Dead Island 1. It's a gauge that must be filled with kills, and once activated allows for using powerful attacks for a limited time to kill enemies. The difference is that Fury involves ripping zombies apart with your bare hands due to the infection within each Slayer. Rage mode, on the other hand, sees each survivor having unique abilities. Jean May's Blood Rage sees her swinging a sword more powerful. while Perna uses a revolver with infinite bullets. Each can be upgraded thanks to the Fury skill tree. It's unknown if Dead Island 2 allows for the same, though that might be what the Newman category in the skill deck is for. Skills and skill deck. Completing quests and killing zombies in the original game grants XP, and there are 3 skill trees to invest in: Fury, Combat, and Survival. Each survivor had distinct skills in each tree, reinforcing their playstyles. Dead Island 2 upends this with innate skills, with each Slayer having 2 at the outset, and the skill deck. You can slot skills in as cards across 4 categories: Ability, Survivor, Slayer, and Newman. It provides a lot more flexibility in how you want to build a character, based on how they play, and you can swap out skills in the middle of battle. Apex Zombies vs Special Infected. In addition to regular zombies, Dead Island had Special Infected with unique abilities. For example, the Thug was more muscular and tougher than the Walkers, and Floaters are bloated and shoot acidic projectiles at players. Dead Island 2 also has Special Infected but calls them Apex Zombies instead. The Butcher, which moves faster and has sharpened its forearm bones to attack with, has crossed over intact. Others have been changed in some ways: the Thug with the Crusher, who is much larger, the Floater with the Slobber, and the Siren with the Screamer, which also appeared in Dead Island Riptide. Of course, how distinct they feel from the first game's Special Infected remains to be seen. Co-op player count. While the first game has 4-player co-op with its 4 survivors, Dead Island 2's co-op is up to 3 players. Interestingly, back when it was announced under Jaeger, the sequel was to have 8-player co-op, according to an interview with VG247, but that didn't carry over. As such, given the expanded skills and skill deck and more linear environments, it makes sense to scale the number of players back for the sake of performance and carnage. Playtime. In terms of playtime, the base version of Dead Island could be completed in about 18 to 19 hours if you stuck just to the story. It would take about 50 hours on average to complete everything, as per How Long to Beat. By comparison, Dead Island 2 is around 20 hours, according to art director Adam Olsen when speaking to WCCF Tech. While this does factor in some side quests, it doesn't account for all of them or playing as different characters, pursuing collectibles, co-op, and so on. Though both games are different in structure, the sequel still promises a fairly meaty experience without an open world. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.